If you have not heard by now, Alexei Navalny actually died in prison. We're going to jump into that story and we're going to talk about who he actually was, which mainstream media is definitely leaving out of the discussion since he's passed away. Listen to this.
47-year-old Alexei Navalny was looking healthy, joking with a judge via video link from his Arctic prison just yesterday. Navalny's mother saw him Monday and said he was in good spirits. Yet somehow Alexei Navalny, Russian President Vladimir Putin's fiercest and most energetic critic, dropped dead suddenly at a penal colony in Siberia. Prison officials say Navalny went for a walk but felt unwell and quickly lost consciousness. They said medics could not revive him. President Biden blamed President Putin.
Make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death.
Pause. So here we have the president, and he's not alone. Kamala Harris and others have said this as well. You're going to see saying that Vladimir Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Now, they have no proof of this. This is what our elected officials do. They just say whatever they want. Mainstream media runs with that narrative from the State Department. They have no proof, no evidence, no proof that this is because of that Vladimir Putin was directly involved. Just like Joe Biden had no proof when he said he saw these pictures of these beheaded babies, which he never saw.
Supporters laid flowers to honor Navalny, despite a warning from the state prosecutor that protests would not be allowed. When a woman tried to unfurl a sign, she was taken away by authorities. Navalny started out as an anti-corruption blogger, exposing on his YouTube show the lavish lifestyles enjoyed by Putin and his inner circle. Navalny was a central figure in massive protests against Putin in 2012. He was jailed and harassed and attacked with a green dye that damaged his right eye. In 2020, while on a flight in Moscow, Navalny suddenly fell ill. He was poisoned by a nerve agent and flown to Germany to recover. He blamed Putin for the assassination attempt. The Kremlin denied responsibility. And then came the most consequential decision of his life. Navalny returned to Russia after recovering from his poisoning. He deliberately put his life on the line and his principles first, until his death today, which is not confirmed by his family, but who don't seem to doubt it. Navalny's wife, Yulia, in Munich, called for President Putin to be punished. We should come.
She just happened to be there. You guys notice this? His wife just happened to be at the Munich security conference.
Together and fight against this evil, she said. In 2021, President Biden warned Putin of devastating consequences if anything happened to Navalny in Russian custody. NBC's Peter Alexander pressed him on that today.
What consequences should he and Russia face?
That was 3 years ago. In the meantime, they faced a hell of a lot of consequences, and we're contemplating what else could be done.
Richard, what is the Kremlin saying about all this tonight?
Well, the Kremlin is calling Western accusations unacceptable and says it doesn't yet know how Navalny died. But critics point out that many of Putin's opponents have died just like this, mysteriously, either falling out of windows or poisoned, or in this case, dropping dead in jail.
Thanks for watching.
Okay. So that is the story about Navalny that they want you to know, right? But there's some things about him that are purposely left out. And I'm meaning, even if you look at his Wikipedia page, you're not going to see the things that I'm about to show you. But it wasn't just Joe Biden. It was also Kamala Harris. Now, when you watch this, I want to remind you of something. Gonzalo Lira died in a Ukrainian prison, correct? That was fairly recent. Notice you did not see Kamala or Joe Biden or all these other elected officials come out and show their sympathy for Gonzalo Lira. And that's because he died in a Ukrainian prison. And if you acknowledge that, then you have to acknowledge that Zelensky may have killed him, just like they're acknowledging that they're saying that Putin killed Navalny. If it were with Gonzalo Lira, if they acknowledged that, then they would have to say that Zelensky killed Gonzalo Lira. That wouldn't look good for the United States, because then you have to justify to the American people why you sending all this money to Ukraine. And that would not look too good for you, right? So pay attention to these things, guys. Now, Kamala Harris comes in as well. Here comes the sympathy card from Kamala.
Before I begin today, we've all just received reports that Alexei Navalny has died in Russia. This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed, this would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
Did you hear what she said there at the end? She said, whatever story they tell. That's kind of like a little signal there, right? From maybe other media networks, those of us that do independent media, kind of a warning to the American people. What other story that you hear, FYI, we're letting you know that Russia is responsible. Now, more Americans need to be, I think, more aware. Again, where was this statement here from Kamala in reference to Gonzalo Lira? And look at where she is located, ladies and gentlemen. The Munich Security Conference. You mean the same Munich Security Conference that Alexei's wife just spoke at? So you see, they were there together. Alexei's wife just happened to be there while Kamala's there. You think that's a coincidence? Because I don't. Now, we're going to dig a little bit deeper here, because I want to tell you what they're not telling you about Alexei. Number one, this guy was a CIA asset. This guy was also a freaking nationalist. This guy was a Nazi. They don't tell you any of this information. None of this. We'll start with the CIA part. Let's bring this up. So, thank you, Brian, for sharing this. Alexei Navalny was a U.S. government-funded agitator. Obituaries include his founding of an organization called Democratic Alternative, or DA. WikiLeaks confirms DA received money from the U.S. government through the National Endowment for Democracy. And you can see this here, actually. It says right here, in 2000, he joined the United Democratic Party, known as Yabloko, under its leader, Grigory. The party stood for liberal and social democratic values. Navalny gained an economics degree at the Financial University, 2001, and from 2004 to 2007 served as chief of staff of the Moscow branch of Yabloko. A charismatic speaker, he was attracted by the concept of television debates, and in 2005 founded a social movement for young people with the name taken from the Russian word for yes, DA, Democratic Alternative, which was active in the media. Now we have more receipts here. And here's the connection. Thank you, Angelo. Navalny CIA connection. Cable from WikiLeaks about funding the NED CIA of the party that Navalny created in 2005, Democratic Alternative. So it says here, Democratic Alternative, Maria Gaidar, daughter of former Prime Minister Yegar Gaidar, leads Democratic Alternative. She is ardent in her promotion of democracy, but realistic about the obstacles she faced. Gaidar said that DA is focused on nonpartisan activities designed to raise political awareness. She has received funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, a fact she does not publicize for fear of appearing compromised by an American connection. Wonder why? Goes on to say here, she told us that DA was a complement to Oborana, not a competitor, and is an effort to widen the democratic base. People who would want to join Oborana would not want to join DA and vice versa, but we work together for a common goal. Gaidar told us that DA was more a forum for open discussion than a political movement. She has organized a series of debates among people with controversial viewpoints. She is also planning to hold a summer camp in 2007 to train up to 2,000 students in the ways of democratic activism. And you can see here's that paper trail here, what I just read to you there. So that's important for people to see. So you had this guy who basically, Alexei here, this guy was basically working for the CIA, or he's a CIA asset. So you guys know how I feel about these alphabet letter agencies. You know, these are not good things. So keep that in mind. So that's important. Notice Kamala's not going to mention that. Biden's not going to mention that. You know, these things are kind of like kept under wraps, so to speak. You have to dig for this type of information, but that piece is left out. And there's more. Come up here. There's the nationalist issue. This is the one I would think more people would have been aware of. Now, Al Jazeera actually called this out a while back. They called this out in 2001 when they said, has Alexei Navalny moved on from his nationalist past? So the Kremlin's greatest critic stopped attending far-right rallies many years ago, but he still supports anti-migrant measures. Let's go on here. We already know that part, so we're just going to try to dive down here. Here we go. Muslim cockroaches. I'm going to show you this. You'll see it yourself. In a 2007 pro-gun rights video, Navalny presents himself as a certified nationalist who wants to exterminate flies and cockroaches, while bearded Muslim men appear in cutaways. So you see, so for those of us that are advocating for some type of self-determination for the Palestinian people, and we're advocating for like BDS and all that type of stuff, and those of us who are not xenophobic, this guy was. And this is just the, wait till you see the commercial, because this is just the beginning. He whips out a gun and shoots an actor wearing a keffiyeh who tried to attack him. Like, no kid. No kid, you guys. Now think about it. All of you, all of us that have attended the pro-Palestinian protests and marches, this is not someone that we should be, you know, shouting out or applaud. In my opinion, I would not be doing that. This is who this guy really was. It goes on to talk about the video. Shortly before releasing the video, Navalny was kicked out of Yabloko, Russia's oldest liberal democratic party, for his nationalist views and participation in the Russian March, an annual rally of thousands of far-right nationalists, monarchists, and white supremacists. So this is why I wanted to make sure that I covered this story, because the same people like Joe Biden and Kamala, people like Nancy Pelosi, the people who will kneel with kente cloth when something happens to a black person in this country, instead of giving you any type of real concessions, those same people are praising this man, a nationalist, a white supremacist. It goes on to say, a veteran human rights advocate recalled falling out of Navalny over his views at the time, when he told me that the future in Russia belongs only to the nationalist Russian political process. And I said, okay, lad, we are not talking anymore. That was Lev Ponomarov, who heads the Moscow-based For Human Rights group and is blacklisted by the Kremlin as a foreign agent. The participants of the Russian marches rallied against the influx of labor migrants from ex-Soviet Central Asia and Russia's most Muslim northern Caucasus region. Some protesters sported closely cropped their hair and raised their hands in a Nazi salute. So this is why this is important. So for the people defending this guy, I'm like, what? Are you serious? No. It goes on to say, in late 2000 saw a peak of nationalism in post-Soviet Russia. So they were talking about the increase there. It says some Russians reeling from 2 wars in Chechnya responded with xenophobia. Far-right nationalist groups mushroomed and some resorted to violence. So that's who this guy is. And that is important for people to know. Now, some of the same people who said to me over a year ago that we should not be participating in a Medicare for All march with some people who are conservative, some of those same people are making excuses for this guy. Ellie, really? Now there's more. Because you'll see here, Z Squirrel, you guys should follow this account. Z Squirrel even pointed it out. Navalny, the far-right Russian Nazi sympathizer who made election campaign videos where he depicted Muslims as cockroaches and pulled out a gun to shoot them, has been pronounced dead. Now watch the Western media class turn him into their brave, heroic martyr saint. And that's exactly what they've been doing. So you'll see here, right? Financial Times had called this out. Right here, defiantly, he recorded a pro-gun rights video in which he compared people from Russia's most Muslim North Caucasus to cockroaches and mimic shooting one with a pistol. Like this is, I can't make this up. You know, it says here, Navalny's more nationalist views are troubling. Last year, he spoke at Rusky Marsh, where some protesters made Nazi salutes. He has also endorsed a movement called Enough of Feeding the Caucus, which protests against the theft of the state funding, which critics see as xenophobic. And a video Navalny recorded for Narod several years ago called for the arming of the population to shoot Chechen bandits. This is who Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and all them out here are sympathizing for. It goes on to say here, he co-founded the nationalist group Narod. Their manifesto, an admixture of what Navalny calls democratic nationalism, includes calls for democratic control of the state, along with volkish precepts like ending the degradation of Russian civilization, restoring the organic unity of the Russian past, present, and future. And every Russian must have the right to receive Russian citizenship and the possibility to return to the motherland. Now, here's that commercial. And you tell me what you think. And Z Squirrel actually was able to find one with the English translation. Listen to this.
Здравствуйте. Сегодня мы поговорим о борьбе с насекомыми.
He says, today we talk about insect control.
Никто из нас не застрахован от того, что в наш дом заползет
No house is safe from cockroach infestation.
таракан. Фу. Ну или в форточку залетит.
Ew, or a fly gets in through an open window.
Все мы знаем, что от мух отлично помогает.
We all know the cure against flies, a fly swatter, a slipper against a roach.
Мухобойка, а от тараканов тапка. Но что делать, если таракан окажется?
But what to do if cockroaches are too big and flies are too aggressive? So if you look at the picture back here, pay attention to that picture, right? Like, this is bad. Listen to this.
Слишком велик, а муха не в меру агрессивна.
And this is the part that they kind of cut. Let me see if I can get it here. But you see this? So this is, it's kind of hard to see it on here. But anyway, this is a Muslim guy or a guy pretending dressed up as a Muslim with the keffiyeh, and he's calling that the cockroach. So when he said that the cockroach is too big or whatever, he was talking about the Muslim people. So they had this guy come in, and then he's supposed to, basically he shoots them or whatever, basically getting rid of what he calls the cockroach. And then let me come back here.
Ну а в этом случае я рекомендую.
You see this? In such cases, I recommend. This is a problem. That's a good question. Extreme said, now why would he even do a video like this? Good question. So you guys see the problem? Okay. So we just supposed to pretend, think about it, guys, follow the money. Think about it. The same government that is funding Israel, that does not want to call for the ceasefire, that's the US government, the same government that's funding Israel, but is giving lip service to us and telling us that we got to protect the Palestinian people as much as possible. Those same people, Kamala and Biden, are out there basically praising this guy who hated Muslims, who was calling them cockroaches and pretending to shoot one in a commercial. So do you see the connection? They're perfectly fine with the xenophobia. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. Whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, when it comes to protecting the state of Israel, they're not as upset or bothered by the xenophobia as they claim to be. This is one of the reasons why they're coming after Rashida Tlaib, because Rashida is Palestinian. She's the only one in the house. And she said, no, you guys are like, you're killing my people. Notice how, again, what did they do? They censured Rashida Tlaib. You didn't see Kamala, Biden, Pelosi, none of them. You didn't see them come to Rashida Tlaib's support. No, because they funding Israel. And a lot of them take money from the Israeli lobby. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to tell you is, whether it's Republican or Democrat, neither one of these parties really cares as much about the xenophobia as they claim, if it is Muslim people. Pay attention to that. There's also claims that people are protesting about this guy's death. So this guy posted this video. Thank you, Hotspot. American man in Moscow. Russia shows that there are no protests over Navalny's death like mainstream media is reporting. So this is just another thing that they're lying about. Look at this.
So as you can see, there are no mass protests anywhere. There's hardly anybody out here. There's maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 people, most of them being media on the opposite side. That's where the Navalny shrine is. People ask me all the time, do you ever have any issues in Russia? Up until tonight, no. But Navalny supporters clearly don't like me. Why would they like a man who came from America to speak out against the West backing Navalny? Well, that just irks them in a certain way. So they decided tonight that they weren't going to put up with my shenanigans and they were going to try to tell me off. They made some false accusations and it was dealt with swiftly. Misinformation doesn't equal factual information. So there you go. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all of them telling you that there's mass panic and protests and riots. It's untrue. Beautiful Moscow, Russia, in peace.
So you guys see this? You see how they just lie? They just tell you anything. Oh, there's hundreds of people out there protesting. Really? Really? Now, we always have to question the State Department. I keep telling you guys, be careful with the State Department talking points. Now, some people got some criticism. Julian Assange's wife being one of them, Cornel West being another, because they sent their condolences to Alexei's family. Listen to this. So this is Stella Assange. This is Julian Assange's wife. Utterly devastating news. Navalny has died in prison. He was only 47. He had not been in prison, or had he not been in prison, he would be alive. Navalny was an opposition figure, but his investigative journalism exposed the corruption of ruling elites in Russia. Navalny had recently been moved to a remote penal colony in Russian Arctic. I feel for his wife, Yulia, and their two children, who will probably never really know what happened. Condolences to his friends and family. And so two things can be true at the same time. Yes, he was an opposition figure to Vladimir Putin. Yes, that is true. But it's also true. Yes, he exposed corruption. Yes. But it's also true this guy was a nationalist and that this guy was a CIA asset. And so in the comments section, like I said, it started with hers first. I said he was a Nazi and a CIA asset. Just look at the comments, guys. DD Geopolitics. Navalny supported the people that imprisoned your husband. You've lost the plot. Gail Scott. Sorry, Stella, but you got this wrong. Navalny was part of the corruption and not anywhere in the same league as Julian. The fact that he will be touted in the news as a hero while Julian is not should tell you that. And where's the one from? There's one from Margaret Kimberly. I want to make sure I get to that one. Lowe says, Stella, you expressing sympathy for a literal Nazi does not serve Julian any good. And so this is coming from Danny Haifong's video, where again, it says Putin derangement syndrome is when you mourn a literal Nazi in Alexei Navalny while ignoring Julian Assange being tortured for doing journalism. So you guys you see the difference? Notice how you don't see them have the same type of sympathy for Julian Assange, because Julian Assange revealed the US war crimes. That's why, right? So the comments, and I was trying to find the reply from Margaret Kimberly, but I don't see it now. I don't know what happened. Maybe there's too many comments now. I should have put it in a separate thing. But yeah, people, those are just some of the comments. And then there's the one from Cornell West. Now, a lot of people have already covered this, so I'm not going to go too deep, but I'll tell you my thoughts on this. Dr. West said, my prayers are with the precacious. I don't know why I can't read today. I'm sorry, you guys. My prayers are with the precious. I said precacious. My prayers are with the precious family of the courageous Russian political prisoner and late Alexei Navalny, just as I pray for my dear brothers Mumia Abul Jamal, Imam Jamil Abdullah, Leonard Peltier, and sister Nergis Mohammadi, and all other political prisoners in the US and the world. Free all political prisoners under cruel and unjust systems of oppression. And so here's the picture here. So you'll see there's Navalny, there's Mumia, and here's all the others, right? So here's the thing. I think that Dr. West may have gotten the impression that people wanted him to be happy that someone was killed, but based on what I've heard from the response. And I, for one, am not saying anyone deserves to die. Okay. I don't think anyone deserves to be killed or murdered. I'm not that. That's not me. I'm not, for one, that way. I can't speak for everybody else, but where I took issue with this is the fact that Navalny is here paired right next to Mumia and people like Leonard Peltier. He's put in this box with them. And these are people that he would want nothing else better to do than to see their demise, simply because of the color of their skin. This is the same guy who's pretending to shoot Palestinian people in a commercial, called Muslim people cockroaches. So, and there's more. There's more. There's some things I can't show you on here. And that was my criticism. So when I responded to Dr. West, I said just that, like, this guy was a Nazi. Like, why are you putting him with these people? And I guess Dr. West saw it as though, well, they were all like political prisoners, that kind of thing. Right. But the thing is this. We have to be careful about who we lump in with who, right? And I think that for me, it's like, this guy was an actual white supremacist. An actual white supremacist. So this is not to say that you have to be angry, or excuse me, this is not to say that you have to be happy that he was killed or however he died. We're not saying you got to be happy about that. But what I am saying is, I'm not giving him a shout out. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not giving Nazi shout outs. That's my thing. And I would not put him with Mumia and Leonard Peltier. I interviewed the Peltier kids. I don't know if you guys saw that interview, but I interviewed Leonard Peltier. They call themselves the Peltier kids. I interviewed 2 members of his family on the show. And so for me, I would not put him with these people. And some people, saw this and they were just like, what is happening here? Like, what is happening? And it's like, especially if you're running on a message of, peace and those types of things. And if you say like you also want to fight back against white supremacy, which Dr. West has said on this show and others, well, then probably not good to be giving shout out to a Nazi. Because some people will see this and just be like, okay, whatever, because they don't really know a lot about this guy. But some people definitely saw this and was like, what is happening here? Right. So I think that piece is important. And I sincerely hope, I hope Dr. West takes that to heart. I hope Stella takes it to heart. Like, I'm not shouting out CIA assets and Nazis. Like, I'm just not, period. So I hope that they can take that to heart. But it's true. This is the same guy who was basically getting paid from the same organization that is responsible for putting Julian Assange in prison in the first place. So no, his situation is nowhere near the same level as compared to Mumia, what happened to Mumia and what happened to Leonard Peltier. That's how I see it. But I would not put a Nazi next to with these people. Eric's going to come in and link this to money and demands, and then we'll go to the next story.
Hey, yeah. So, we're certainly seeing this latest further fragmentation of the left, right? And it's I think what I wanted to connect it to is the money and demands, and basically to the idea that whenever we're talking about these things or pointing things out, if we make those connections to like, why are these things happening, right? Why did we have this war or this, this Russian invasion war in Ukraine? Why are all these bombs being dropped in Gaza? And what I'm saying is we always need to connect it to the money and the corruption. Every bomb that's dropped in Gaza is money for the MIC, military industrial complex. The reason we had this conflict in Ukraine is because it makes money for those interests. It's all about war, and war tensions are profitable. And of course the war tensions with Russia is profitable. And so then, that's, if we don't identify that as the driving force, then how are we going to fix it is what I'm getting at. And so we have this whole Congress and executive branch that's bought off by these same interests that want these wars, that want these war tensions. And so we need to make those connections to the corruption. And so what I'm proposing, what I'm trying to say is that every time these things come up, we need to make those connections. And the way I like to frame it is MCDS, money, corruption, demand, solutions, and then get to the demands part. And I feel like most of the time it doesn't even get to the corruption part, and then also to the demands part. So what's our demands? Our demand is to end the corruption, to end the way that this government serves these interests, these big money interests, and not ours. And when you get to that, then you look at, okay, what are the solutions? And then you can really be getting somewhere. And so, so from the campaigns and from most of the commentary out there, I guess I'm making a humble challenge to try to always bring it to that, to the corruption, the demands, and the solutions. And so this connects into that, because Navalny as a hero is just, the reason that's being done is because it's an attack on Putin and part of that whole war tensions. And so if all a commentator or a candidate does is play into that, then they're not getting to the demands and the solutions. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well said. Thank you so much, Eric. And one other thing I want to add, people, for you to just think about, if The president and the vice president and the State Department are shouting out this guy. Chances are probably not someone it might be someone you need to look into. Put it that way. Notice they didn't do this for Gonzalo Lira, right? Like I said, because he died in Ukrainian prison, and that means they would have to try to hold Zelensky accountable, and that's mess up their money train because they got to have excuses to keep sending him this money and sending him weapons. So pay attention to who they acknowledge and who they don't acknowledge.